Hi everyone, I'm Polly and this is Every Trick on the Hook. In this video we are going to learn how to use an invisible join to finish our rounds of crochet. So this is something that you use when you're working in the round, and it's used instead of a slip stitch. Normally when you would come around and finish a round of crochet, you would slip stitch to the first stitch to join the last stitch to the first one, but that's a little bit clunky and it's not as attractive as the technique of an invisible join, which is what I'm going to show you. So just a basic invisible join. You snip your yarn after you've done your last stitch, and then you can go ahead and pull the yarn through like so. Grab your yarn needle and thread it. Okay, now I want you to find not your first stitch, which in this case is some chains, but the second stitch. And you're going to take your yarn needle and go right under both loops of the second stitch and pull your yarn through. Essentially what we're doing is we're going to make a new front and back loop of the first stitch. So we went under the two top loops of the second stitch, and now we're going to come around and go in through the middle of the last stitch. And if I turn it over, it will go right through the middle of those two loops, and I want it to go under that back loop right there, and I'm going to pull it through. So you can see it's kind of loose here, but we're going to pull it a little bit tight. So see how it looks just like another stitch on the top? That's what we're going for. Now after that, it stays pretty loose, so you're going to want to weave the end in a little bit more. So what I like to do is bring this back around and go through the back loop of that first stitch, the one that we created a new top loops for. I like to go back to that one, slip the yarn under some of the back loops of that stitch, and then in through the bottom loops of my round. So that gives me a nice secure stitch. You don't want to pull it too tight because you want it to look just like another stitch. But what that does is, so my yarn went up through my last stitch, it went around under the second stitch, back around, through the last stitch again, and then it went back around, hit the back loops of the first stitch, and then went underneath the stitches of that round. And then I would continue to weave in my yarn. But that gives me a nice, secure, invisible join, and you can see I use chain stitches, so you can still kind of identify which one it is. But from the top and from a little bit far away, that invisible join is just really, really nice compared to a slip stitch join. Now I want to show you how to do that when you're using chain stitches. So in this round, I did double crochets and a chain one in between each, and that's a little bit, it's essentially the same technique, but it feels a little bit different when you do it. So I've ended here with double crochet and a chain one, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull my yarn through and then thread my yarn needle. Now I have chains 1, 2, 3, and 4 to begin with. So the first 3 are my first double crochet, and the fourth one is my chain 1 that goes in between my double crochets. So I'm going to take my yarn and go under the top 2 loops of that chain 1 space. This is where an invisible join is maybe great, maybe not. So when I end with a chain, it's honestly not my favorite thing to do, but sometimes you really need an invisible join even though you're ending with a chain. I will slip my yarn needle under the back loop only of that chain and pull it through. Now you can see this is really sort of loose, and the chain 3 that you started with to act as your double crochet, kind of flimsy. The connection up here between the top loops and that, not great. So I like to make sure after I go through the back loop of my chain 1, come right back around and hit at least 1 or 2 of the loops of my chain 3 to sort of bring it together and give it some more body. So you see how that already looks more like a double crochet? This little piece of yarn going underneath, that's the yarn I just pulled through one of the back loops. And then I will weave it down the back of those chain 3s and immediately into a few of the next stitches just to give it some security. And after you've done an invisible join, you're already there, you can weave in your ends if you like. I actually never do it because I always leave my ends at least for 1 or 2 rounds just to make sure I've done everything right and I haven't made a mistake. If you're confident, count your stitches, make sure you're good, go ahead and weave those ends in, you're already there. If you need to take out an invisible join, that's the tricky part, isn't it? But it does happen. So all you really need to do to take out an invisible join, grab your hook, if you can figure out which stitch it was, and it was this one right here. Stick your hook under the back loop of the invisible join and pull it up a little bit. If you wove it in pretty well, it's going to be hard to do. But if you can find it, pull in this direction. So it's going to come from over here, and you can pull it right back out. After that, you can pull it through here, and then you have to do a little bit of unraveling on this side, but it can be done if you don't weave your ends in all the way. And that is an invisible join, either in the round with some solid stitches or with some chains and chain 1 spaces.